We've talked about this at multiple points, that loafers are, in many ways, a very versatile shoe, and that's especially true when it comes to how you can wear and pair them.
If you're just starting out, get stuff that you can wear reliably over and over again. Over the years, I amassed quite a shoe collections, and one thing I've learned is that loafers are a different animal. Do you think the same about loafers?
Absolutely. They're a bit different than a standard lace-up shoe in a multitude of different ways, so we'll discuss that and a few other factors of what to look for when building a loafer collection, what we each like in loafers, and why we think they're a good option to have.
We talked about 20 plus brands of loafers, and we tested loafers from brands, and if we don't have a loafer that we experienced, we didn't put it in the list simply because loafers have a different last, right? It fits differently, you don't have the support of the lace, so the fit is really paramount.
Right. And I think that's one of the biggest ways that you can differentiate and define a loafer from other types of shoes, is that it's a slip-on shoe, it's got that low vamp, it doesn't have laces, it's got a low heel typically, and the ankle is exposed.
And then there's variations, right? You can have a vamp that is lower or higher, and I think it's much better to look at them shoe by shoe. Mm-hmm. So maybe let's dive right in and let's start with Meermin first.
Sure, sounds good.
So Meermin is a brand that's made in China with like Spanish heritage. It's like from the Albaldejo family. Mm-hmm. It's like the Carmina shoes.
Correct.
I don't have a Carmina loafer, do you?
I do not, no.
Okay, so that's why we have the Meermin. But what I like about them is they're really affordable, like $195 to like $205 US dollars. They have a higher end line, which is I think $310. Mm-hmm. We did a video about best dress shoes under $300. We also did one about ranking higher ones, and you can check those out on the channel. But we did it a few years back, right? And the prices have changed quite a bit for a lot of brands. Meermins are still at like $195 price point. What are your thoughts on them?
Well, speaking from experience of the pair that I've had for, what has it been, about 5 years or so now, I wear them fairly regularly, maybe not quite as often as some of the other models I have, just because this sort of deep chocolate, rich brown isn't quite as versatile as, let's say, a medium brown might be, mm-hmm. but they are a comfortable loafer. It's a fairly middle-of-the-road style. They are suede, which means they can be dressed up or dressed down. As you'll see, a lot of my loafers are suede, actually. So yeah, they're certainly a somewhat versatile option in my wardrobe.
Yeah, and I mean, they're Goodyear welted. I noticed you added like a rubber...
half sole, yeah.
Half sole. It's something you do frequently, right?
For pretty much all of my shoes, yes. There are a couple of exceptions, as you'll see, but for the most part, yes. I add rubber half soles to basically all of my shoes, just because with the physical disability that I have, I need a little bit of extra traction in most circumstances. Yeah. So a plain leather sole, I'm just going to slip around too much.
And you're also adding stuff on the inside, right? It's like, is that fit-wise or...
Yes, there are a multitude of different modifications that I make to my loafers, actually. So, as you pointed out earlier, it can be more difficult to get the fit of a loafer exactly right because you can't adjust the fit using laces, and they fit lower on the foot. So yes, I will typically add things like tongue pads on the inside if the loafer is a little loose. I also add inserts into my shoes, which is the white that you can see on the interior here, because another thing I've got is hyperhidrosis. So I sweat a lot, and that includes my feet. So these are kind of odor eaters, I guess would be the simple term, but they do also snug up that fit just a little bit more.
Nice. Yeah, see, like, my Meermins are these here. They're quite stiff, and they're in really bad shape. I kept them for a video on how to restore a shoe. They're like cordovan. No, it's not Horween cordovan. Mm-hmm. I think, I don't know where it's from. But yeah, these were always quite stiff and tough, and I didn't like that. I had some of their Linea Maestro Oxfords, and they were really nice. Nice leather and a beautiful shoe. I think back then we rated them like the best value for the money.
I think so.
So overall, if you want to check out that brand and learn more about it, I refer you to that video. I think they still, in terms of pricing, they've almost even gotten better.
I would say so, certainly as a comparative value as prices of other brands have gone up quite a bit.
And their value has already been great. So I think that's just a standout shoe if you're just starting out.
Definitely one to take a look at.
Next up is J. Butler. Sadly, I don't own a pair of them, and I'm friends with the owner. He's a great guy, Justin. He started out as the fine young gentleman, and he had a vision of a loafer that was kind of New England inspired, right? So what does it mean?
Well, I think the fact that these shoes, as compared to several of the other loafers we'll be showing you, they're definitely, you can look at them and see that they are a more casual kind of prep-inspired style. They've got this very low vamp here that's almost kind of slipper-like.
Yeah, if you compare like the opening, right, this part versus this part, this is much shorter. So it's more slipper-like. And it's kind of the style that I think Justin went for. All these shoes are made in Mexico, and he even has stuff like, like alligator, right? Pretty cool. I think he did like a bit loafer,
Yes.
kind of a Gucci loafer style inspired. I think he now even has like driving marks.
I believe so.
I have to give them a try, and I suffer from slim heels. And I see you may too.
Yes, you can see in addition to the tongue pads that I've added to some of my pairs, I will also add a heel pad or a heel insert occasionally. Just happens to be on the right shoe this time around because in addition to loafers being, more difficult to fit than a lace-up, we're humans and we have all of our little quirks, and sometimes our feet can be slightly different sizes from one to the other. So this left shoe already fits naturally more snugly than the right shoe. So I had to make modifications here, but none here.
So what did it here? It's a quite low heel. That's another kind of stylistic feature they have. They're like Blake stitched, maybe Blake Rapid, I don't know. But the materials, it's a Mexican leather. They're not quite as fine as the European leathers, but the price is $229.
Very reasonable, yeah.
Very reasonable, and it's really nice. I wish they would fit me better. My issue is that they're quite tight in the front and loose in the back. Now that being said, most loafers for me are really hard to fit, simply because I have this slim heel, and so I'd say for some people, the reason to go to Bespoke is to say, I want loafer or Chelsea boots. They're harder to fit than lace-ups, for example.
Right. Yep. Less room for error.
But I mean, rating-wise, Meermin, I would say, like, I'd rate them overall a 5 because they provide great kind of quality at the value. These I can't rate because I can't wear them. The value is great, obviously. What would you say?
Yeah, I would say probably, again, in my own personal experience, as all of these will be, probably in the 3.5 to 4 range, I would say is my experience. I did, when we were, full disclosure, sent this pair of shoes, I had to send the pair we were given originally back and get a different pair. My typical size did not fit properly. Again, they were a little tight in the front of the shoe, so we had to recalibrate.
So you had to size up?
Correct, I did have to size up.
What do you typically wear?
Typically, I wear an 8.5 in most shoes.
US?
Yes.
And then these are size 9?
I believe these are 9s, yes.
Okay, so that's good to know, right, when you order stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, the third brand we're taking a look at here is Scarosso. These were also ranked in our under 300 video from years ago. This is the same pair that you'll have seen from that video back then, and you've got some pairs here as well.
Yeah, I think the price has gone up quite a bit. It used to be like lower, now it's like $340 to $370. But inflation's everywhere. They're made in Italy, Italian leathers. This loafer, you can see, right? I haven't done any shoe shining because we're waiting for doing it in a video, but these I really liked because they were this woven leather, and it's not just embossed, it's actually woven leather. So that's pretty cool. I don't think they offer this anymore, probably because it's more expensive, but it's penny loafer inspired. I have these like suede green tassel loafers too. So I always liked that they had more of an unusual style, and you could get things that are more, hard to find normally and ready to wear. And they fit me quite well in the heel. So that was for me a big, big plus. So these are the 44 size 44. Usually I'm, 44 and a half, sometimes 45. So on those, I went down in size. This is a 44 too, and it works quite well. It's, leather lining and stuff, but it's the Blake, so you have the leather and not much else. So if you have foot pain, it's not ideal, but otherwise I like them. How are yours?
These were almost, well, I shouldn't say an everyday wear for me because, of course, we encourage people to, if you have the means, rotate your shoes so that they're not getting heavily worn. But as you can see, these are actually somewhat heavily worn. I wore them quite often, actually almost sort of religiously for a while, and they showed their wear. I had to get the top lifts, which is this rubber piece on the back of the heel, replaced a couple of times, and as you can see, I've probably got to do it again soon here. My heels, I have what's called a Haglund's deformity, so kind of a bump or a growth of bone on the backs of my heels, and that actually wore through the original leather on the back of the shoe, so my local cobbler had to put in an extra piece of leather here, but even those are wearing away a little bit now, so these really were kind of a sort of daily driver for me for quite a long time, and they show their wear as a result, so they're kind of knock-around shoes for me now.
See, for me, ideally, I would like to have more of a couture welt, or like a little more padding, so to speak, but otherwise, they fit me really nicely. I've worn them. I wear them predominantly like in warm weather. I don't think they would be my first choice for like snowy, rainy environments.
Right.
But overall, I'd probably rate them like a 4. Maybe now with increased prices, 3.5. But then, considering they fit me so well, I would say definitely 4. Because it's hard to find that. And if you can find a loafer that fits well, buy them.
Right. I was disappointed to see when I went on the Scarosso website a few months or so ago that this specific model they no longer carry either because I wanted to replace these worn models. I could certainly find something else though. I think rating-wise, I'd be in a similar area, probably 4 to maybe even 4.5.
Okay. It's interesting because, a lot of brands, sometimes the brands, you can buy shoes forever, which is nice, right? If you have a style that you like, you can go back and get them. At Scarosso, that's not the case, right? You see something you like, just get it because there's a new collection, and unless it will become a bestseller, they may not sell it again.
Exactly.
Here we got an Hallmarks loafer, and it's an American brand. They're all made in Italy. They oftentimes do this kind of Kickstarter model where you pay and then you wait a little bit, they're produced, and then you get them. Meaning you get a lower price. I think you can still buy stuff on their website. They're like about $324. But then, they're often run sales, so they're 30% off. So you're more like in the $227 range, which is, I think, quite good. They have American sizing. Now, I think it wasn't always that way. Here, I had an 11.5. Yeah, it's a nice shape. I think, it's, the leather is decent. It looks nice. The heel is a bit on the taller side. I don't wear them a ton, simply because I have other loafers that I like more. But I'd say it's a decent pair of shoes, especially if you get it on sale. And again, the fit is quite good for me. Not just on the loafers, but also on the others. So that is something for loafers to really consider.
That's been my experience too. I don't happen to have any Hallmarks loafers, but I do have other shoe styles from them. And I think something that the brand prides itself on, and we've certainly heard quite a lot from viewers and commenters, one of Hallmarks' strengths as a brand is their shoes are, for many people, quite comfortable out of the box, which is definitely a plus compared to some other brands.
You can see if you can do this with a kind of same effort. I'm not getting anywhere here in these Meermins, right? And typically, in a good U-welted shoe, you always have that cork insert, which is more comfortable when you work a lot. Here, you don't have that, right? There's no cork there. That's something to consider.
Yep.
So rating, I think maybe 3.5, 3. I think between the Scarosso and them, I like the Scarosso more. But and I think also since we first, reviewed them and they came on the map, a lot of things have happened in the shoe world. And so just things change over time, right? And the value you can get.
The next brand we'll discuss is Loake, which I believe is out of England, yes?
Yes, they are like Northampton, classic. I would say, they're price-wise lower than other Northampton makers, but provide a good value. And they have different ranges. I think their 1818 range is the highest. I think this was more like their main range.
Yes.
See, that's a nice heel. It had full rubber. You added this, right?
Correct.
You added that. But yeah, Goodyear welded, nice suede, neatly done. Here you can't, they sewed on the penny part right there. I think this is the Eaton model. It runs for like $330. Back then when we tested it, I think it was more like the equivalent of $235. So more of a price increase. Definitely not the worst offenders, but yeah, I mean, if you make in England, things are going to cost more.
Exactly, yes.
So what do you like about them? What do you not like?
Well, of course, the reason that I chose this pair in the first place back when we did our first round of reviews is because they were a fairly interesting color. You don't necessarily see sort of an olive green every day in a shoe.
Yeah, this is another olive green suede, but it's a little darker. And I mean, why don't you grab your other Scarosso here for a second, just to see, I mean, look at the wear difference, right?
Yes. Well, and that's also because originally when we got these, I followed their sizing instructions. These are a size 8 UK, which I guess would be a size
9 US.
So they were slightly large on me because, again, my dress shoe size is an 8.5. So I didn't wear them a lot initially. And in fact, in our original video, I think I may have even said, I'd like to wear them, but they're too large for me. Well, after I did fairly extensive modifications, as you can see, tongue pads, heel pads, I've got my inserts in there, doing all of that work, they do fit me well enough that I can now wear them, and I do enjoy wearing them. But I had to put some work in to get there.
So ideally, you would have gotten a 7.5 UK?
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know.
So rating-wise, I think for these, given that I did have to put some work in to do some modifications, I would probably put these in I would give these a solid 4, I think.
Okay, nice.
Next up is Velasca, which is another Italian brand.
Yeah, it says handmade in Italy. Vero cuoio, real leather.
I believe that's, yep.
Your size 41.5 here? Yeah, okay. I have a pair of shoes from them too, but it's in Oxfords, so I don't have their loafer experience. I mean, this is kind of neat. It's like unlined.
Yes, unlined and very soft. As you can see, there's no structure in the back or the heel of the shoe, so they're very slipper or moccasin-like in their construction.
So they slip off easily?
They can, yes. I've again dialed the fit in enough with my own modifications and the original size that I don't have a problem, although I'm not usually, going to be sprinting in these or anything like that, so.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at them and the shoes, they're very similar in the feel to a Scarosso or an Ace Marks in the sense, there's the kind of heel and toe support are softer. I mean, here there's nothing because it's an unlined. I mean, it's intentional, right? They want it to be kind of softer,
correct,
comfortable, out of the box. And it's they're all in that same vein. So price-wise, these are $360 now. They used to be like $195.
Prices have definitely gone up.
So I think at $195, I thought they were really well made and a good steal. At this price point, I don't know, I find them less attractive.
Yeah.
Scarosso has a little more out there stuff. They often have very classic styles.
Yes, I would say that's been, in my own experience, but also looking at the websites and the brands in general, I think that's kind of the biggest differentiator is Scarosso really tries to cut a silhouette. You look at it and say, oh, that's distinctive. Whereas and you've mentioned it here, when I think Velasca, I think soft. That's kind of the word that summarizes the brand for me.
Soft, but also the styles. It's kind of somewhat English inspired, but not in a showy way.
Right.
They're more kind of, I don't want to say old world style, but they don't have these aggressive, more progressive lasts that you see from Gaziano Girling, for example.
More conservative.
Exactly. More conservative, for sure. So how would you rate them?
Well, at the price point that I got them, I mean, I wear them quite often these days. Again, a sort of medium brown suede loafer.
No.
Dress
Price
up, dress
point
down.
today.
Price point today, well, let's see. I'd probably have to put them maybe more in the 3 range, I think
Okay.
would be a fair compromise.
Good. All right.
Okay, here we have Henry Stevens, which is actually a relatively new brand name or mark.
Yeah, I think they, we looked at like Shoe Passion. It's this German brand, and I think they did quite well for themselves, despite their kind of unusual name, shoepassion.com. And they also they bought Heinrich Dinkelacker, which was made in Hungary, more chunkier style. I have a pair of winter boots I really like. I don't have loafers, so we don't really talk about them. Same with Shoe Passion, I don't have loafers. I like they have kind of this lighter blue contrast stitching on that like navy suede. I think it's quite nice. This is kind of interesting. It reminds me more of like a sports shoe,
A little bit, yeah.
And they do these kind of rubber insert shoes.
Which can be a double-edged sword. For someone like me, it was helpful because, again, I like having that extra traction. I didn't have to put separate rubber half soles on them. But I know that it can also be a concern that this might wear at a different rate than the rest of the leather in the sole could wear, and then it might be harder to replace or repair. So, something to consider.
I mean, these are made in Portugal. Model is called Berlin. When I see the rubber insole, in my mind, I'm always like, this is a cheaper version of a shoe. You don't see it on high-end shoes, so it always gives me pause.
Yep.
So I don't like that in particular. These are $372, made in Portugal. The style is, I think, Murray. What do you think?
Well, for that price point, especially if you are in the market for those higher end details, like you said, having that rubber insert on the sole could give you pause if you're looking for that high end experience. So for this price point, that might scare you away a little bit. I have enjoyed wearing these shoes purely for what they are, for how they look. Then again, you might be able to pick this up in our studio lighting here, that the navy of the suede here is kind of wearing or fading in some spots as well, to the extent that I might even try my hand at re-dyeing them a little bit. So we'll see how that goes in the future. But yeah, at the price point that they're at, I probably couldn't rate them any higher than a 3, maybe a 3.5, but your mileage may vary.
Okay.
Well, next up is Alan Edmonds here, and I happen to be
Don't put your shoes on the sofa, Preston.
only for the purposes of display.
I always tell my 7-year-old, and look at you, come on.
Well, some people never learn, I guess. But yes, next up is Alan Edmonds. I've got, an incredibly classic loafer style here. The oxblood penny loafer. You can see that we've got the little beef rolls, as they call them, on the sides of the saddle here. So a very classic sort of prep staple loafer style.
And this is hand sewn, right?
I believe, I couldn't tell you for a fact.
Yeah, I think they make these uppers, maybe Dominican Republic or something like that. Everywhere there's hand sewn and their moccasin stuff that's not made in like Port Washington. The rest is all done there. I mean, I visited the factory, a few owners ago, and we did a kind of cutting apart Alan Edmonds at various stages. And to my surprise, it seemed like very little had changed in terms of the construction itself. Now, what I have heard with people is say like the quality control is not what it used to be. And a lot more things that maybe used to be seconds are firsts. So as you go through, you see these defects and stuff like that.
Right.
But I mean, you've always been a big fan of seconds, right?
Yes, I have. Purely because, especially when I was first building my shoe collection, I was trying to do so in a budget-conscious way, and buying seconds when you're able to is a good way to do that,
Yeah. I mean, when I look at them, they definitely have more of that grandpa feel to me.
I would say that's accurate. But
So if that's something you're after, I think that's good. Pricing-wise, I think under new ownership, it's more like, oh, this is $425. Maybe they were $300, and then they're discounted to $275.
they play the sales game a little bit, yeah.
I think constantly. I find it harder to find them not on sale than on sale.
Right.
So take the retail price with a grain of salt. I mean, yeah, Goodyear welted, there's cork in there. it's, I think, for a lot of people, you know, compare it to, I don't know, like a Ford, you know? It gets you there, but it's not a high-end kind of shoe.
I would agree with that. In previous videos when we've discussed Allen Edmonds before, one word that I have come back to in my experience with them is they are a dependable shoe. They're not necessarily going to be the sexiest option per se, but they are typically going to be, at least in their classic ranges, a very kind of conservative, middle-of-the-road, even maybe grandpa-esque style.
Check out the cut apart video. It's quite funny to see all these different styles.
I do actually have another pair of Allen Edmonds here. These, I don't believe they're offering these anymore. And as you can see, I stopped wearing them because, again, they were heavily worn. But these were a line that were designed, I believe, specifically for travel.
Extra light.
They were named, each model was named after a different airport in the US, I think. I can't remember which these were, but you can see these are sort of all rubber constructed soles here.
And here you wear an 8.5 in Allen Edmonds, right? 8.5 US?
Correct, yep.
Okay. And that's also what you usually wear, right?
Right, yep, that's right. So I did like these. I'm not wearing them as much these days because, again, they are pretty worn. And a local cobbler, which is typically what I do when I want to repair my shoes, would probably have trouble with this. Allen Edmonds, with their own recrafting services, have said that they can replace these rubber soles. But
And their recrafting service is pretty neat, right? You have to say it's neatly done. You know, it's less waste. It's environmentally more conscious. You could set them in there. It's a good process. You know, to take a photo when it comes in and have it figure out there.
Right.
So that's definitely a plus of the Allen Edmonds shoes.
My biggest drawback personally with Allen Edmonds shoes, and you might even be able to see this on these loafers here as I hold them up, there's a bit of white that you can see in the heel of this shoe. And as you saw in our cutting apart video, they use thermal plastic in some different areas of the shoes, and in particular, almost all of their shoes have thermal plastic heel counters. Now, the downside for me is, with my Haglund's deformity, thermal plastic will never break in like leather would. So over time, this thermal plastic can give me quite a bit of irritation on my heels if I wear these shoes for too long at a time.
So in a higher end shoe, you get all leather. And that makes a difference then, because it just adapts over time.
Absolutely.
Something to kind of keep in mind if that's an issue for you.
Yep. So again, probably a 3.5, I think is where I'd land.
Yeah, I definitely have more at a 3 probably. Okay. Next up is Yearn. And I'm having a Chelsea boot here.
Yeah, I'm noticing a distinct lack of loafers sitting here at the moment.
Yes, so Yearn. Jack on our team, he has loafers from them.
I see.
And he really likes them. He's like, they were a little harder to break in for him. But yeah, one thing about Yearn, you know, on their website, they're like, what, 510, I checked, at Arterton in London, where these are from, and where we tried them on. They are maybe a little more, but you know, there's the VAT and all that stuff in there. So you have to just check on that. Arterton also ships to the US and everywhere, and they removed the VAT. And you know, Will, the founder of Arterton, I think he did a really great job in kind of finding this brand.
It's out of China, correct?
Correctly. So it's, you know, it's made in China, but if you look at this, I find this is a very classic style, very elegant. It's a slim waist. And the big difference is, like, this is a hand-welted shoe, right? So what does that mean? For example, if you have a Goodyear welted shoe, like the Allen Edmonds, or just, you know, pretty much anything else, you have a piece of leather, and then you add what is called a gem band. It's just a band that is glued on, and that's where you attach the insole to. And then you also have the stitching here on the outside where you connect the soles, and you know, that's also typically made by machine in a Goodyear weld. So you have two welds, and we have these graphics for you so you can see what that looks like from different angles. Now, if you get a bespoke shoe or a handmade shoe, what they do is they take the leather and they cut out that channel that you sew it onto. If you check out our Bespoke shoe series, you can exactly see how that's done. And then also here, they hand welt, right? And so Yearn does exactly that. So these are made like Bespoke shoes, but at a price point of $500 US, it's mind-bogglingly low. You don't find something like that. It's really unusual. And what I like is, for me, the fit is remarkably good for ready to wear. I think I've never had ready to wear fit as well. And I mean, I can talk about it, but if I put them on a Chelsea boot, it's like it fits here in the heel. So I just imagine a loafer would fit the same. So I want to get a loafer. It really hugs you here in the middle. There's no air in here. So I'm just impressed. And I also find them, I don't find that they break in. I think they break in better than most Goodyear welted ones. And also like on my foot, I find them just really elegant. And I think Jack thinks so too. Let me read what he wrote about them here. He said, I'd rate them a 4 out of 5. They're very nicely round at last without feeling old and stuffy, so they pair with my wardrobe and style very nicely. They're lined, but the leather, both uppers and lining, is thin and supple, meaning they feel more comfortable than some line styles I've tried before. They're hand-welted, flexible but well-made soles, have lots of nice, subtle sartorial touches such as tight beveled waist and slim, elegant penny saddle. They felt a little more challenging to break in when compared to the Cleverleys, purely because of my own foot sensitivities, mainly around the inner heels, the left instep, but I know these are my typical problem points. And yes, these may have been Jack problem points. He rated them a 4 out of 5. I'm like, in my mind, this is like a 6 out of 5, simply because the shoe itself is elegant, it's really well made, and the price is comparatively low. I'm like, wow, this is just... And these here, I haven't worn these yet, simply because, I got them when it wasn't the time to wear them. Similar, yeah. But again, we have to talk loafers. Size-wise, 10.5 here seems to fit me really well, which is what I typically wear.
Sure.
Yeah. To me, it's like, you'd be hard-dressed finding a hand-welted shoe in this price range. Just not something you come across every day.
So it sounds to me like you're definitely yearning for a pair of these loafers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Next up is another classic American brand, starting with
Alden.
Alden of New England, since 1884.
Or thereabouts.
Or thereabouts, yeah. So, it's kind of funny. When you put those on, they definitely feel more like what my father-in-law would wear in the 90s, stylistically. It's a lower heel that's quite wide, gives you stability, Goodyear welted. This one here has kind of this saddle with the tassels. I think what they're most known for is cordovan.
Yes.
They come, in, I think 8 different cordovan colors. And yet not a sleek modern last. It's like if you want that old school New England prep style.
They sort of pride themselves on that, actually, of not being beholden to trends, but rather upholding the classics in a way.
Yeah, I think they also use thermoplastic. They'll probably cut those apart so we can examine all the things that actually go in there. Price-wise, they're like at $665, I think, for the regular leather, like $885 for cordovan.
It's on the pricey side.
So definitely on the pricey side. So if you like that look, I find them a little bit, it's not my favorite shoe.
And in what way? Just because they're rather stuffy, almost?
Yes. They're more stuffy. It's just not... I think there's other shoes out there that are nicer. Unless if I feel like I want a preppy outfit, then I see myself treading towards that, because they do that well.
Sure.
So yeah, I think at that price though, overall I'd rank them more in a 3 area for that.
Right.
So next up is George Cleverley. And if you're unfamiliar, Cleverley has this beautiful toe that's very chiseled. It's like a custom piece. and they're known for their bespoke shoes. They also added a ready-to-wear line. It's made in England, I think by Crockett & Jones. I'm not 100% sure on that. I don't own a pair. Jack owns 2 pairs of them. And Jack's verdict is, they look nice. An elevated loafer, which is, I think, great for modern times where you want something smart but not super formal. That being said, I wouldn't pair them with something like denim, as even the brown pebble grains are a little too formal in the last. They pair better with casual classic trousers like well-cut cotton, linen, or frescoes. I have them both in black and brown for added versatility, and I found the black ones in particular make an excellent travel shoe as you don't have to fuss with laces, and it can be dressed up or down depending on where you're going, what you're doing. He gives them 5 out of 5. So made in the UK, 550 pounds, it's about $700. I can't speak to them. Have you ever worn them?
I have not, no.
No, but Jack is a connoisseur. He has lots of different pairs. He has Edward Greens, Gaziano Girling, so he really likes those. He also has Crockett & Jones. So I take him by his word. Given that, he gave Yearn a 4, I gave them more. There is a certain element of subjectivity, and I think how they fit you and how they work with your style is important. Now, he mentioned he uses loafers as a travel shoe. How about you?
Absolutely. Loafers are a great travel shoe because of the ease with which they can be put on and taken off. That's great for going through airport security, of course, when they want you to take off your shoes. You don't have to faff around with laces and that sort of thing. And also, just their casual, versatile nature. You can dress them up or dress them down. Works for sort of a capsule wardrobe that you might have when traveling. Well, not that you would have when traveling, but that some of us would. So in multiple ways, they are a good travel shoe, certainly.
On that note of Cleverley, which are made by someone else, I have a few other pairs here. This is a pair of Paul Stewart, made in England shoes. This is Ralph Lauren, Purple Label, made in England shoes. And this is Barney's New York, made in England shoes. So a lot of these brands, whether it's Ralph Lauren or Barney's, their stores, Paul Stewart is a store, they have their own shoe lines. And so over time, they may just change who manufactures for them, right? So the style changes, things change. And at different points in time, they used different manufacturers, right? So this one here, I think it could be a Grenson. Maybe it's an Edward Green. It's, nicely made. And you can look for any particular year, in Style Forum. People are all over it. What I liked about this one was it was a kilty loafer, which is unusual. And again, not something you find in ready-to-wear.
No, not usually.
Have you ever seen it?
I haven't, no.
Have you ever owned one?
I have not owned a pair of kilty loafers. I'd like to have another option in my wardrobe, but maybe someday.
So I got this one off of eBay. It's 11D. And the thing too about it is they have the information written on the inside. So once you know your style, then for this kind of last, I need this size. And that's super helpful. What these American brands sometimes do is, they change the sizing. It's not UK sizing, but US sizing. And so you don't know. Normally I'm at 10.5 UK, which translates, to 11 or 11.5 US. But depending on the last, it's not always the same. So I like these very much. The problem is I checked, and, at Paul Stewart now, all the shoes are made in Italy. So this pair does not have anything to do with the ones you find on their website now.
Right.
So that's why I can't just say, Paul Stewart, great price and value. I think their current shoes run $5.95. I've seen their shoes, their Italian shoes. I would rate the English ones more highly, especially the Edward Green ones. And Edward Green, we'll talk about them later. We also did a video about them. We cut them apart. It's a high-end shoe. And so this particular model here was made by Edward Green for Ralph Lauren. I bought those on eBay too. They were basically unworn, and I just love this style, right? This is kind of a Gatsby-ish two-tone spectator loafer, which is typically something you have to get made to order or custom. Do you have any Spectators in your collection?
I have Spectator shoes, but not specifically Spectator loafers. That's on my to-buy list, certainly.
Because you like Spectators and you like loafers.
Correct.
It's just a combo. Okay. And here's another one. Barney's New York, made in England. This one, I believe, is also an Edward Green, based on everything. Again, I like this kind of kilty with the buckle style.
Almost sort of a hybrid between a loafer and a monk strap in a way.
Exactly. But really, this doesn't do anything in terms of support. I mean, you could tie it down a little bit, but it's already pretty much the last hole. I just thought it was really cool with this kind of rose gold stuff. It was in good shape. Yeah, sometimes you can find these, and I think this is more of a vintage thing. So when you know what you look for, the modern Edward Green all have the thing on the side and this oval. These are older ones where it was just written up here, but you can look at it and you're like, oh yeah, this is that last that I know, and you can identify things that way. I think, the modern Ralph Lauren Purple Label are like $995 to $1,095. They're made in Italy. Here too, I'd rather get the made in England ones, because they were I think Crockett & Jones made some for them, maybe for the Polo line too, but then they had Gaziano and Girling for Ralph Lauren Purple Label. They had Edward Green, really good, shoes to get. And oftentimes they have a more unusual style.
Right. Yeah, but it underscores how it's also important to do your research from time to time. It's not necessarily just the name that's printed on the shoe, but you need to dig a little deeper and understand who is the manufacturer, and then you can get more into that assessment of style and quality and construction and all of those things.
And even the same manufacturer can make things to different specs. That being said, if you're in a factory where someone makes high quality shoes, you can't just tell the worker, ooh, for this client, make it high quality, and for this, just be quick and shabby. So typically, factories specialize in one or the other. And so if there's a really good high output in that factory, chances are everything they produce is at a relatively high level. Can there be differences? Absolutely, right? Sometimes they have hand welted and then machine Goodyear welted. And it's good for you to understand what it is that you are getting.
Right.
Another really iconic loafer.
Gucci.
Yes. It's, Italian Gucci loafer. I don't know. Have you seen a movie?
The recent movie that they did, sort of about the history of the brand, I have not seen it.
With Lady Gaga, they talk about there was gold in there and stuff like that, and what they did, yeah. So, we did a whole video about the Gucci loafer and whether it's worth it or not. So for details, I think check it out. These ones, actually, we got at a local store. They still have the sticker on them. $38, size 11, So the retail price of these today is $1,050.
A little bit different than 38.
Yeah, a little bit different. But they're not, they were sold as is, but look at this. The heel still says Gucci Italy, It's definitely one of their older versions. It's not new, but it's in good shape, It's a good shoe. It looks neat. Has the Gucci label in there. The sock liner moved forward a little bit. But yeah, you can still wear it. The gold horse bits are a bit kind of, are not in the best shape anymore. But for $38, nice little shoe. Very classic if you like that look. Jay Butler also offers these.
Yes.
At $229, which was a fifth of the price. So it's something to consider.
Yeah, I don't currently have either specifically a pair of Gucci loafers or a pair of horsebit loafers in general in my wardrobe. It's never been a style that I've been particularly crazy about. It's always struck me as a little bit more on the flashy side of things, but at the same time, never say never.
These are an 11D or 44. They're definitely more on the snug side. But again, for loafers, sometimes you need a little bit more snug of a fit. So when in doubt for a loafer, I'd always size down rather than up.
Yes.
But that's also with my heel and my slim heel experience, where I'm if it's too big, it's not going to work for sure. When we did the original video, I think they were a little lower in price. and I was saying, you know, it can be worth it if you want all that iconic style. And I think nothing has changed there, right? You're not buying Gucci loafers for the workmanship. Workmanship is neat and stuff, but you can get same or better workmanship at a lower price, right? You're buying this for its iconic look and for its, you know, original design idea. It's like buying a, you know, Mies van der Rohe chair, or, you know, buying a Barcelona chair, or buying a specific lamp, right? That arch lamp, you know, you can find knockoffs for a little bit. This is what you buy, is like, you want the original, you want that kind of air of the brand.
You're buying it because it's Gucci.
Exactly. And so for that, do you get that? Yes, you get that. I'd say it's maybe like, you know, 5 out of 5. Value-wise, it's probably a 2 out of 5, maybe even less.
All right, so we've got Gaziano and Girling here. These technically are a style of shoe referred to as a lazyman shoe, which is still a slip-on, although not technically a loafer. They're loafer adjacent.
They're loafer adjacent because you have nothing really holding it on. There's some elastic in there. You see they come up higher than a traditional loafer.
Right.
But yeah, it's a brand, I think, that most shoe enthusiasts are kind of ravenous about, right? I mean, I remember I first came across Tony Gaziano's style when he was making bespoke shoes for Edward Green. And then he kind of got together with Dean Girling, and they started the company. And, you know, I respect them greatly for what they did. They kind of had a very unique style that was very aggressive, right? And this is the last, it's a TG 73, you know, with the chisel, Tony Gaziano 73. They now make, you know, the shoes for King Charles. They have a showroom in Savile Row. During our recent trip in London, you know, we visited there. We talked with them. The storekeepers, you know, very nice and interested. Like, one of them was just getting a suit made across the street from Chittleborough and Morgan. And he was like, yeah, I'm on my 15th fitting, you know, and it's like, they're both like high-end, you know, Chittleborough and Morgan is expensive. Gaziano and Girling is expensive. I think their regular shoes, you know, are like 15, 1600, 1700. And then, you know, you can spend more. They have made-to-order options. They have like hand-welted options. And it's interesting to see because, you know, if you look at them, I think this was a made for Paul Stewart again. You know, we mentioned Paul Stewart earlier, but it's from Gaziano and Girling. And one thing you notice, you know, is like little details here. This kind of cut in detail is something, it's like a hallmark of a handmade shoe, right? And on later shoes, you don't necessarily see that anymore. You know, that just has changed a bit. So you can see, even with kind of Gaziano and Girling, this sole is a bit thinner than this one. You know, things change over time. This waist is maybe a bit slimmer, a bit narrower. And so as companies change their lineups, things evolve too. And it's something just, keep in mind. But yeah, if you know that, you know, these are Paul Stewart for Gaziano Girling, that's great. And they come with the shoe trees. This one I like a lot because has a contrast stitching on that dark chocolate suede, and you know, you see every imperfection immediately. So if the person sewing the upper can do it. Plus, what I also like is, you know, I did it on my first bespoke shoe, is this kind of cap toe that's pointed, because you have to get it centrally aligned when you last it. So, or not when you put it on the last, when you pull it over the last, to make sure it's all, you know, very center, which is harder from a craftsmanship point of view. And so that you find stuff like that only on higher end shoes typically, because of that. One thing I noticed with all of their shoes is, you know, they're quite a bit longer in their last, which is why a lot of people, you know, you see here it's probably a centimeter, you know, half an inch, which is why a lot of people feel they may be more elegant. I wouldn't like run in those, you know, like running in those. You definitely feel it's a little longer. You can still walk comfortably, but it's a shoe that's, you know, made for looks first and then for comfort second.
The extra length probably adds to the drama of that chisel shape that they've got here.
Absolutely. And then they have other cool stuff. You know, for a made-to-order shoe, you can get, they call this, I think, Wensum sole, which means it's, rubber at the bottom. You wouldn't be able to tell from the top. It looks like a regular dress shoe, but it makes it very soft, So this is like about as comfortable as a sneaker, but it doesn't have the look of it. So if you like stuff like that, they're definitely great for that. Now let me look here. I think they also have something they call the Optimum hand welted line, but they're more in the kind of made-to-order territory. That would cost, 3,950 pounds. That's over $5,000.
That will set you back a bit.
And that's not even bespoke. It's like made like bespoke, but maybe if you find a last that fits you really well, and you're like, I don't need bespoke, and I get a Gaziano Girling look and workmanship, 5,000 is a lot. Otherwise, it's like 1,700 to maybe like 2,200 plus 225 for shoe trees. Maybe sometimes you find them at like Le Faux or whatever, and maybe they have a sale. Cool. Yeah. But the lasts of them are beautiful. And I know Jack, for example, he loves Gaziano Girling. He's really a big fan. I think they're very, very nice shoes at a very high price. So,
did you pay full price for any of these, or were they secondhand?
I bought these all on eBay.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't feel comfortable spending it. On eBay, I was super happy to pay that price.
Absolutely.
But new, I'd be really hesitant. It just seems like a lot of money. And you get that look, you get certain things. But I can also have bespoke stuff made, right? And so if we briefly talk about made-to-order loafers, have you any made-to-order loafers?
I do not.
Okay. I think the only one I have right now are these from like a brand called Undandy. And the cool thing is, I was able to design all of this, right? So I wanted this kind of subtle contrast between the leather and the uppers. It's kind of a configurator, so you see things, but they're not 100%. I think these are like $225. If you think about it, that's a really good price for something that you can choose of how it looks like.
Right.
They were limited in certain options, right? So here I chose like the hidden welt, basically, right? It's a size 44. So I chose something that was a little smaller, and it's still a little big, and the last is quite, aggressive too. If you look, it's quite soft. There's a bit of a toe reinforcement, a bit more in the back here, but it's still on the softer side. I mean, it's a summer shoe, and for something like that color, probably I wouldn't go with something else. I think I'd rate them, probably a 4. Gaziano and Girling, it's a hard one for me. I would say maybe a 4, because the quality and stuff is all like 5, like it's top notch, but the price
is also very high.
Brings it down for me. These here are low price, and you can customize everything, but I still don't find myself going towards those a whole lot. I don't know. They are somewhat comfortable. Maybe it's the style. I don't wear them that often. I only wear them in the summer. I also think the toe shape is not quite as elegant.
And of course that can sort of be customized, but with that there's probably a trial and error process. You actually do have to get the shoe in front of you before you can see what it looks like in person.
And I tried a few different, I looked at a few different last designs, but none of them were which ones were like, yes, that's it, right? You think about it, last design, you can have a really beautiful, elegant last. That doesn't change the price of the shoe, right? It's sometimes the waist thickness, like the slimmer it is, the more handwork you need when you take the production last out. But, your toe shape is not affected by that.
Right.
So it's just something to kind of keep in mind. There's also, Chinese brand like Acme, ACME. I saw them at Arterton in London at the showroom. Really nice shoes, beautiful patinas. And I think Yearn also offers a patina service. Acme is more expensive. It's like, I don't know, 1,200 pounds. So it's still under $2,000, and you can also get bespoke shoes there around that range, which is inexpensive for an bespoke shoe. And you get all the details, fiddleback waist, patina, everything. It's really nice, and it's made in China.
Right. Yeah, I think Undandy was one of the first to do that sort of product configurator model with the customization options. They were early on the scene with that. I think obviously there are lots more brands that are doing that sort of thing today.
Like we did Idrese. They had a really nice boot I got from them. I think they also have loafers. They're also made in Spain. I think they're a little higher. They're more like in the 325-ish range.
Yep.
Then you have Gaziano Girling Optimum line, which is 5,000.
Right.
And there's lots of other brands that have, made-to-order programs and stuff. Again, we just capped it to shoes that we've had an experience with.
Right.
So, yeah, we haven't had those. Now, yeah, made-to-order to me, it's kind of almost like a no man's land, where it's like you can get ready to wear, and then made-to-order, yes, you can customize certain styles, but... I think Justin Fitzpatrick, for example, he has made-to-order styles too, so that could be interesting because he has interesting stuff. But on a bespoke side, I'm like, that's where you can truly customize everything. And so one model that we have here is Wayman Bespoke, which is a really cool concept.
Yes.
Don't you think?
They sort of market themselves as online bespoke, which for somebody who is, really a stickler about that sort of thing you might say, well, that seems like a contradiction in terms. Is it more of this made to order? But I think Zima, who owns the brand, does try to add in as many of those bespoke elements as one can in an online environment. You take measurements of your feet in a more detailed way than you would for many brands. Yeah. He sends you pairs of trial shoes, which is also part of the bespoke experience. So it's definitely an interesting concept. And of course, each of us went through the process to get a pair from him. And you got these twist loafers here.
Yeah. So I think this is actually best compared to traditional bespoke. So let me grab those shoes here. So here I've got a pair of, these are alligator loafers. They were made here in the US by shoemaker Amara Hark Weber. She also made my first pair of bespoke shoes here, and I just keep them here so we can go over them together. So one thing I really appreciated about Amara, right, it's like that you build that relationship. You go there, she measures your feet, she does everything, nothing depends on you. With Wayman Bespoke, it's a German brand, but it's made in China. Zima is your point of contact. And I talked to him. If you want to watch the interview, you can do so. But he really kind of becomes your concierge, right? So first you need someone to help you measure your feet, and then you send some photos and maybe some video, and then they'll make a trial shoe. And then you try on that shoe, and then based on that, they have the feedback, and then they can make the real shoe. That way they try to ensure to get a fit that really works for you. How did that work out for you?
It worked decently well. I don't know if this is the typical experience that a regular customer would have, so to speak, but I know that both you and I were sent multiple rounds of trial shoes before we settled into our final fit.
And I think it also had to do, I watched the videos again and I saw that Nathan took the measurements and I remeasured based on the scanned image. And I realized how he measured was, he was, measuring starting at 1 centimeter. So it added more. So I think, and the good thing is with these remote operations, yes, if you get the measurements wrong, they'll still cover you and make sure they'll do as many trial shoes as you need to get it right. But with Zima, you can go to the website, you can choose a style, you can talk to him, you can look on Instagram and get an idea. The shoes start at just over €1,000, I think. So it starts in that, $1,100 range. I think these shoes here, this is a letter from Haas, kind of a, caviar Scotch grain. And plus, I think we did like the toe taps and, kind of a more fiddleback waist, kind of on his website it was called a Cuban heel. I chose something that was a little less aggressive than the full Cuban heel. So if you compare it, like, this was the other heel on my first bespoke shoe. They're very similar. You can see they're angled this way, they're angled that way. You see these angles. That means each layer is done by hand. And then here, you have that cut in, which was something that we saw at the Gaziano shoe too, right? These things like, okay, good. You see this heel is quite a bit higher, which is something that I like. This one was even higher. My other loafer one is lower. And you can see even the size difference, right?
Yes.
It's quite substantial if you look at it. So with a bigger heel like this, you'll have more stability. This looks more elegant.
Right.
So you can decide, which way you want to go. But, here, like this green, you can decide. They do all the stuff for you. They can do patinas for you. This style was not something that he had on his site. I think he had the twisted loafer. But I was like, well, can you also make the twist here in the back? And they're like, yes, let's try. So they can do a lot of the things that you would want to do. Initially, I was also, well, can I send you some alligator? And that's when the trouble started, because then, you are with the CITES regulations, you have to ship it over, all the paperwork, it would cost you thousands of dollars. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do that only with my local bespoke shoemaker. And here, I never spoke to the person who made the last, who made the uppers. Here with Amara, we film everything, we were right there. But even if you're not doing it, you can talk to that person, you can get a progress report, you have that connection. And I really like Amara, and that's really cool. You can kind of see stuff. That's something that you're definitely missing out on with this experience. At the same time, price-wise, I think, this model would cost around like $1,300, $1,400.
Yep.
The shoe trees, they do like the last shoe trees. I think they're 220 euros upcharge, so they're kind of part of it. They're made like the last, they fit really nicely. I would, if you get a pair of bespoke shoes, I would definitely recommend that you get those too. I would not skimp on that and get something else. I think Wayman Bespoke is a really great value. I'd say, I'd give him like overall probably a 5 out of 5, because you can customize more than in a made-to-order program, right? I can add these things. He has letter options. You can send letters. There are patinas. And you get something pretty decent for, way under $2,000. When I started, with Amara Hark Weber, I think her prices were quite low. And that's something, if you work with an individual craftsman, right? You support them, but as they get better, they also raise their prices because their product gets better. And really, they can't just say, ooh, I'll pump out, 5 times as many shoes.
No.
They would have to hire people, train them. They can pump out as many shoes. Maybe they get a little faster, but they can get better in their craft and then charge more for that.
It's the difference between a factory operation and an individual artisan.
Exactly. Absolutely. And so, like, look at these loafers here, right? In comparison, for example. This is hand sewn. I actually sourced the alligator myself from, it's American alligator, so I don't have to worry about CITES and stuff. That really helps. And that also brings the price down, right? If you get genuine alligator bespoke shoes, it mostly you will not get that under $6,000-$7,000. If you go to Gaziano Girling or Cleverley, I'm sure you're more in the $12,000. I mean, it's expensive, right? It's not inexpensive. And with alligator, there's also, when you get the skin, you want a matched pair, in the sense that are the scales roughly the same size. And then, they come with imperfections, and you have to understand, well, how are we going to cut that? From which part are we going to cut the shoe, so you can see, is that an issue and is the size right? So doing alligator is a lot more involved, because the material is expensive, and you have to really find which way are we going to lay it out. So with this leather or this leather, you could just go and cut it. With this, I was there when we actually laid out which piece would go where. So we all agreed on what it would look like at the end of the day.
Right.
And here it was interesting. I did like a wood-packed shank. It provides more stability, and you don't sew it there. It's something you often see in Austria. And then that this shape here in the front, this penny is quite aggressive, and you can go underneath of it. And I wanted that little contrast piece, but that shape here is also here. And then we kind of doubled it and put it in the back, but all at scale. And I think what made it quite a bit more difficult is that we actually did a his and her loafer. And she's like, I never did that before. And it's actually quite a bit harder because, the proportions should look the same, but it's a different foot and it's a smaller foot. So it's actually much harder to get it all right. And I doubt you could, maybe you could get something like that with remote bespoke. I really felt it was helpful to be there in person to get all the kind of same elements. Because you can see everything is kind of scaled and different. And then on the inside too, we were able to do things like lining details, that match, right? Little things like that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get. So, and Amara, I think since we made the shoes, she changed her prices now. She has a waiting list of 1.5 years.
Oh my.
So if I go to today and say I want a pair of shoes, the goal time is getting it in 2026. And so, before she had like a base price and would maybe upcharge. Now it's like each project is different, because if you get a standard, plain toe Oxford, it's very different than if you get super intense broguing, super difficult last, super special detail on your heel and sole that can almost add 40% of labor.
Right.
Well, you have to kind of charge for it somehow.
But at the same time, that is something you want to take into consideration. You might not necessarily want to take the time and go to the expense of going to a bespoke shoemaker if all you're getting is a standard plain toe Oxford,
Exactly, and maybe you want to do that, but for me, I was like, hey, let's do stuff I usually don't get.
Right.
Let's get the his and hers, alligator loafer. That is definitely not something you'll ever see off the rack. I think Carmina does like off the rack alligator, but you have the same issue with like customs and stuff. So in that case, you're better off just go there, buy them, and wear them when you get home. Then you don't have these issues, so to speak.
And did you find that, obviously you had worked with Amara once before in the creation of these shoes, so you had gone through that process with her. Did you find that Teresa's experience in getting her shoes made was different in any key ways from your experience?
We'd always go together, right? So we do a fit, we do measurements both at the same time, fitting at the same time. Maybe Teresa was an easier customer. Maybe I'm more detail oriented. How about this? How about that? Yeah. So she's more like whatever you suggest. So I'm different in that regard. But I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend you check out our video series on how the bespoke pair shoe was made. I think we'll also do one on this one and how it was different, because it was quite different. And you can even see the size difference on this one, right? Is different. The other thing you get, apart from the relationship with the bespoke shoemaker, for example, here, right, originally I had a leather heel because I thought, that would be cool with like brass nails. And then I wore it a few times. It was already worn down. It was like, holy crap, this is not good. So I asked her, can you put in, a rubber heel? And she did, right? And that's, am I going to send these shoes to China just to get that done?
Right.
No, I'm going to go to the local cobbler, right? So these are the things you get when you have a local craftsman.
And that's key too. You mentioned when you have a local craftsman. Of course, not everybody is necessarily going to be fortunate enough to have a bespoke shoemaking operation in their backyard, as we happen to here. So that's another thing to consider as well.
Well, and also like for the cost, right? Let's say you travel to London, right? I'm here in the US, so I need plane ticket, I need time. Well, maybe even if I get a steal of a shoe there, maybe it's $4,000. Well, by the time I travel, by the time I value my time, I'm easily at $10,000, right? So these are all things to consider versus if someone is here in your backyard, you can just drive there, get it done. Same with a remote bespoke, right? I don't have to travel. It's some time and that's what you get, but it's a relatively good experience. And I think for someone who has foot issues, but is maybe not able or willing to pay the full bespoke price, this is a really good value. I'm giving this a 5 out of 5 because what you get. Same thing here. I'd say, for me, it's like a 5 out of 5. If you compare the lasts, would I say maybe that Gaziano Girling is more elegant looking? Yes. In terms of walking comfort, this is definitely better, right? There's different amount of toe spring, which is the area in the front here where you roll. So these shoes are made for walking. And the same with these loafers, they're made for walking. And, we made an entirely different last for this one versus this one because it is the loafer.
Right.
And I would say, this already was better in the last than this one. And I would guess that the third pair then is ideal. Like maybe a Chelsea boot in alligator or something like that.
Well, you'll find out in a couple of years, I guess.
Yes, I will. Exactly. If I go that route. But cool to see overall. Any last comments from you?
Well, the only other thing that we wanted to consider today was just a couple of other questions as far as, obviously we've kind of run the gamut here from relatively low-priced or value models all the way up to full bespoke. Of course, if you want to check out other things about loafers, we have several other videos, our basic loafer guide and a number of others. But for somebody who is maybe starting out and kind of building their loafer collection from the beginning, what would you recommend as a good pair to buy first to kind of cover some bases in the loafer department?
Yeah, definitely alligator loafers. No, just kidding. What I like about the alligators are the color. I think burgundy color is good, and then a classic penny loafer style.
Yep.
You can't go wrong with that, right?
And that's the advice I followed too. These models from Allen Edmonds tick both of those boxes. They're a very classic style, almost too conservative maybe for some people's tastes. Yeah. And of course it's that oxblood shade too.
This is bolder, and you can see, I don't wear them a whole lot because it's more of an occasional shoe. But I'm really glad I have them. But it's not the first one I would add. I would say burgundy is a good color. Like you said, mid brown is good.
Yep.
I personally, you said you don't get as much wear out of your dark suede. I think a dark suede is beautiful.
Oh, I like them a lot.
And
yeah.
You can wear them with like flannel, but you can also wear them with like linen or seersucker. So I think that's a good color. I don't have a single pair of black loafers. Jack said he likes them.
Yep. I've got a couple pairs as well. Yep.
Exactly. I'd rather go with a dark brown instead of black. But I even noticed your black ones are not as worn as the others. And then so chocolate brown to me is also a good color.
Yep.
Lighter colors I tend to wear much less, and so I would add those later in your journey. Same with green. It's just not, you're not going to get a whole lot of wear out of it. So just understand what is your goal, right? I mean, I have a bunch of loafers, a bunch of shoes. My issue is not that I wear out the soles, right, or anything like that. So it's like, I just want something different for a different look that works with my jacket or whatever. Then yes, by all means, go with something like that. If you're just starting out, get stuff that you can wear reliably over and over again.
And that, I think, is one of the strengths of the loafer, especially in this day and age. We've talked about this at multiple points, that loafers are, in many ways, a very versatile shoe, and that's especially true when it comes to how you can wear and pair them. Loafers can be very easily dressed up or dressed down, basically anywhere from smart casual to, these days, business or cocktail attire. You could even go to that level.
There used to be a time when, like a double-breasted jacket or suit would never be worn with a loafer because it was kind of a clash of formalities.
Right.
These days, I mean, people wear double-breasted, unbuttoned. That there's
with sneakers.
Exactly. Like the loafer is going to be more formal than 99% of things out there.
Right.
So you'll be fine. And yes, I like that it's kind of, it feels a bit more casual, but yes, this slip on, slip off. I always suggest, use your shoe horn, unless they're bespoke and it works. But otherwise, yeah, if you damage the back of the shoe, not good.
Right. I have two more questions for you. The first is, what in particular, when it comes to construction, should somebody look for in a loafer that would say, this is a mark of quality?
I think, I prefer Goodyear over Blake because I like the padding. And one thing we did with these loafers here too, which was nice, was under the insole, traditionally, you add cork. We added latex, which is, natural caoutchouc rubber, which is quite soft and springs back. Here, we had added a foam layer underneath the insole because I said I wanted something that was really long wearing. And as you age, typically you get more foot pain and all these things. So having these things built in that allows you to wear something comfortably all day is really great. So I appreciate Bespoke for that. And we did it here too, making sure it's super comfortable, having foam in there. And even if the foam would wear out, we could replace it. That is really important to me. Could you get that with a, off the rack shoe? You have to put something in, go to the cobbler, maybe put in a sock liner, all that stuff. You have to kind of wrestle with that.
As I've done with a number of my pairs of shoes.
And fit is so paramount. So when you buy the first ones, make sure you can return them or you try them on in store so you really get an idea. Also, the time of day is important, right? When you travel on a plane with your loafers and you take them off before a long intercontinental flight, you may have a really hard time getting back in. So that's something to keep in mind, especially when you travel. But otherwise, what I'm looking for is typically how much toe spring is there, and how tall is the heel, and how is the fit in the back. Workmanship-wise, yes. I mean, I look at the top. Most of these are hand sewn. The little stitching, yes, this is a high stitch density, which is really nice. Same here, but that doesn't make you feel it when you walk. So it's not mission critical. It's more like a thing about beauty that you like. So I would say I prefer Goodyear, Blake. And then, you had some loafers that were completely unlined. Understand what it is that you're going for, right? Do you want stiffer heel caps or do you want something super soft? Ultimately, they'll all be comfortable over time. Maybe not those Meermin cordovans because they were always stiff, right? And so it's understanding, do I want a really soft shoe? Do I want a hard shoe? Because that makes it really different in how you wear it. And if you don't like wearing them, you're just going to put on a different pair and then they just stand there and you're not gonna use them.
Right. And my final question for you today is something that our viewers are dying to know, which is, what do you have against Belgian loafers?
I think the original Belgian loafers, they were really more made as house shoes. They're really soft and not meant to be worn in the street. The Belgian loafers, I mean, they come up. This is like a slipper here. I think this is a Crockett and Jones, which are made by Bohill and Elliott. It kind of comes up, and I mean, people wear them with all sorts of stuff, with evening wear, for example. And I'm like, no, I'd prefer a more deeper cut opera pump or different style. I just think they're overhyped. The construction is not particularly nice. Yes, they're a little softer, but I can get that with other things too. I much rather wear a pair of like Gaziano Girling or like this pair than Belgian loafers. And again, it's subjective.
Yes.
And I love to hate on them, and that's fine.
Right.
There's other companies like, Bowden and Lang or like Belgian loafers, Velasca. There's a lot of brands that do this kind of Belgian loafer style. And I think some people, they kind of get lazy and they're like, oh, this is that one style I wear all the time. That's not me, right? I like a variety of things. I like different things. And yeah, I just don't like the Belgian loafers. I have so many other options. why on earth would I wear them, right?
Exactly, and we ask that question somewhat facetiously, of course. You know, you've mentioned it in the past. Jack on our team is a big fan of Belgian loafers, so it's a discussion that you guys have had. But at the end of the day, there are so many different styles of loafer out there that you'll be able to find your favorites, your preferences, and there are lots of options for you to explore.
Yeah, and sometimes it's good to just say, hey, I hate that. I'm never going to wear it. It's, you know, in my mind, it's garbage. Not for me. And then there's no reason for it other than that that's who you are and that's your style and that's okay.
Yep.
Like, don't be afraid to say, no, I don't like that and I love that.
Exactly. Right. Well, on that happy note, I think we can bring things to a close for today.
Yeah. Well, if you like this, you know, let us know. We can make other videos like that. I was thinking about maybe like, you know, boots, or Chelsea boots. Let us know in the comments. And maybe there's some brands that we missed that you rank highly. Please share them with us so we can make another video.
Absolutely. We're always making more videos, so nobody can accuse us of loafing around.